Ukraine. We've talked about Ukraine and the invasion from Russia quite a lot on this channel, and I've actually escalated my discussions of the topic a lot lately since obviously Trump getting elected has a pretty massive bearing on the state of the war there. But something that I've been constantly frustrated by is the fact that Americans, and even non-Americans, but mostly Americans, have been fooled into this idea that our support for Ukraine is us simultaneously wasting money on a proxy war against Russia because our establishment just loves war and has a derangement against Russia, while simultaneously believing that the Ukrainians don't really want to fight anymore, and we're forcing them to fight, basically, and that withdrawing support for Ukraine would actually just speed up the rate at which peace is achieved, because if they just lose to Russia nice and fast, then I guess peace will be restored. This is a brain-rotted idea. Like, everybody who is right-leaning, and even a lot of centrists and some Dems, fall for this mindset. And a lot of big mainstream outlets on the right push these ideas that us supporting Ukraine is us spending money that should be going to Americans on a war that's just killing Ukrainians and leaving countless innocent people dead. It's a really lazy and stupid mindset, and I assure you, no one who pushes these ideas does so with a Ukrainian, an actual Ukrainian on their show. In fact, one of the pundits who has been spreading this basically Russian propaganda for years now is Piers Morgan, a technically centrist, but has really bought into the right-wing culture war stuff and is a massive proponent of it, English commentator. He's got a show called Piers Morgan Uncensored, has massive viewership. Getting onto his show as a political YouTuber to do a debate is a really big deal, and it is an especially big deal that not just some random YouTuber, but an actual Ukrainian advocate for her country has been invited onto Piers Morgan. How many of you guys are aware of Ukrainian Anna? If you're not, I'll go ahead and tell you. She is a woman from Ukraine who has made quite the name for herself talking about her country's status during this war, counteracting Russian propaganda, talking about her experiences. I believe her father literally was murdered by Russia in an airstrike on her home. This is someone who is not only actually Ukrainian, but also someone very close to this war and very much aware of what Russian occupation means for Ukrainians, who has actually managed to make their way onto Piers Morgan's show to debate both left-leaning and conservative anti-Ukrainian pundits, who are, of course, anti-Ukrainian for the same reasons, at least publicly. She's going to debate them. I've not watched any of this yet. I'm excited to see what bits of it we can watch, considering it is quite long, but I am really excited to get into this. I heard that she did great. I've not watched it yet, though, and I'm just ready to stop putting it aside, and I'm ready to get right into it. Hopefully YouTube doesn't try to, like, take my shit down because Piers Morgan is, like, copyrighted or something. It probably is. We'll see how much of this we can watch. If I have to cut it early, then it's because YouTube might not like me live streaming my response to a Piers Morgan thing.
Biden made this country and these people promises he could not keep. It's Biden's betrayal.
These wars are not about America. This war is about our very long time, centuries-long oppressor trying to thrust us back under their control.
The book is not called Justified. Why Russia had to do what they had to do.
Are you done with Russian propaganda?
That's all anyone ever says is that this is Russian propaganda. But that's just a bunch of crap.
Because it is. Are you getting money or not?
Oh, give me a break. No one in America cares about Russia at all, lady.
Can you shut up for a second?
Trump's main bluff is, I'll make this war much bigger if you mess with me. What if Putin says, yeah, go ahead? Well, then we're in a lot of trouble.
I've never seen you quite this angry.
Piers, I'm angry about hearing misinformation. Stop. You owe us $1 trillion in destruction of our country.
I like, Piers Morgan is honestly a great example of the brand of politics that is successful now. It's the TMZ-ification of politics. Like these flashy cuts and the crazy dramatic music. It's like watching celebrity gossip. It's all about the blood sports, the gossip, the drama, you know? This is what gets people invested into politics. It's what gets people into it. They stay for the politics. They stay for the ideology and the adherence and the loyalty, but they get into it for the drama and the blood sports.
We can stop talking about the risk of World War III. It's already begun. That was a chilling warning of two United States national security experts this week. And the evidence is certainly mounting. Syria, Gaza, Lebanon, Ukraine are all red hot. They're all regional proxy wars with the United States at their
Man, I guess they were wrong about World War III being fought with nukes then.
apex, whether most voters want it to stay there or not. Our debate has been focused on Joe Biden's disastrous decision to pardon Hunter Biden, his son, and the cover it provides to Trump's own clemencies. But Trump's war strategy will have much bigger consequences, and the world is awaiting his answers. He campaigned and won with a populist anti-war message, but now he's warning that Hamas will have hell to pay if it fails to release the hostages, and he has a cabinet with a bite to match his bark. Ukraine's President Zelensky now says that Ukraine will be prepared to cede territory in exchange for NATO membership, and NATO apparently agrees. But he won't make any decisions until Trump is back in the White House.
For those who don't know, one of the biggest one of the biggest W's that Ukraine could get right now is getting NATO membership. Ukraine or Russia is very unlikely to attack a NATO country. And if he does, by law, he incurs the wrath of all NATO members, or at least most NATO members, if I'm not mistaken. And so getting Ukraine in NATO, even if it's in exchange for ceding some territory to Russia, they're not able to retake some land that's been taken by the Russians, is probably a better outcome than continuing to fight, because whatever they can secure, it's ideal to get. If they can get that in exchange for NATO membership, that's huge. And of course, Putin's biggest nightmare is Ukraine joining NATO. Trump could just pull us out of NATO, wouldn't matter. NATO, even without us, would be a pretty scary threat to Putin.
Putin may not be interested anyway. Many people...
I still don't think, ideally, Ukraine should have to cede any territory. I would like them to recapture Crimea. I would love to see Ukraine manage to push back in and retake Crimea. That would go crazy. That's the kind of shit I would like to see. But hey, the best case scenario that's possibly achievable is obviously ideal.
People think that a rapid retreat may provoke Putin and is the safest way back from the brink.
We've watched from the United States as the Biden administration has driven the U.S. ever closer to a nuclear conflict.
Ah, yes, a very trustworthy source. A guy who got sued, and in the process of being sued, we had text messages come out of him admitting he doesn't believe the things he reports on. A very reliable and trustworthy source of information, Tucker Carlson.
With Russia, the country that possesses the world's largest nuclear arsenal. It has accelerated ever since, and it's reached its apogee so far in the weeks after Trump's election. He's now the president-elect. In that time,
I don't care about this. I want to get to the debate.
But it is ongoing.
Well, joining me to debate all this is the author of Provoked, How Washington Started a New Cold War with Russia and the Catastrophe in Ukraine, Scott Horton, the former Navy SEAL who killed Osama bin Laden, Rob O'Neill, the host of the founder of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, and Ukrainian streamer and YouTuber, Ukrainian Anna. Welcome to all of you here. Let me start with you, Ukrainian Anna. First time we've had you on Uncensored, so welcome to you. I watched the interview with President Zelensky at the weekend, and I went to Kyiv 4 months after the war began and interviewed him and the First Lady. And he was resolute then that Ukraine would not cede an inch of territory to Vladimir Putin. And that was certainly the mood of all the people. And yet here we are, just over 2 years later, and there's no doubt that he is now countenancing the idea that Ukraine would cede the territory that's been taken by Putin in return for membership of NATO for the rest of Ukraine. What did you think of that interview that he gave?
What I think about it is there are certain realities that we have to contend with as people, and many people in Ukraine are of the opinion that Trump will, when he becomes president, push Ukraine to basically some sort of concession. And our job is now to somehow figure out how do we guarantee our security in the future and how we prevent Russia from attacking us again, which is something that most people think NATO membership is, because Russia is not in the business of attacking NATO countries. It's in the business of attacking Georgia, Moldova, Ukraine, countries that are...
For reference, Russia is right now successfully overtaking the government of Georgia. Georgia's government has been basically it fell to Russia. Georgia's about to become like via a violent war invasion related context. It's about to become basically a piece of Russia, a Russian buffer state of sorts. Though it's not really buffering against anything. But regardless, though, hey, Evergrado, good to see you. That's definitely a good point. I mentioned that before. Like, Ukraine wants to be in NATO. Russia does not want Ukraine to be in NATO. Anyone who does not want Ukraine in NATO and does not want NATO supporting Ukraine is in favor of what Putin and Russia are in favor of.
Outside of NATO's protection. So most people in Ukraine obviously don't want to cede anything because we know what happens in those occupied territories, and so does UN and many other organizations that gave their nod to the acknowledgement that there is a systematic torture, rape, abuse, deportations of Ukrainians, prohibition of Ukrainian language, culture, and all sorts of horrible things. And of course, nobody wants to abandon our people to that sort of fate, but also you have to kind of content with what our allies want and what is their decisions. So I believe in that sense that Zelensky is doing exactly that. He's acknowledging the reality of Trump's presidency and what will happen. So I think we should also wait and see what exactly Trump will do, because his plan has been discussed, but we don't know really much details so far. So I wouldn't jump into conclusions.
It's so nice to finally have an actual Ukrainian on one of these shows, because now we don't have to hear that bullshit argument of Ukrainians are dying, we have to stop supporting their war effort because if we keep supporting them, they'll keep fighting and dying. We're supporting their deaths, as if they are not begging us to continue supporting their war effort. This genuine concern trolling of an entire under siege country's population.
Right
no,
now.
I think that's right. And I think that, I mean, I'll bring Scott Horton in here. Scott, the thing about Trump is he is unpredictable. We don't know. I talked to him last week about this. We don't know exactly what Trump's going to do. People keep trying to say this is what he'll definitely do. He'll give Putin everything he wants and so on. I don't think that's going to happen. But in terms of this deal that Zelensky seemed to be putting forward, where Putin would keep the land that he's taken, but that the rest of Ukraine would come under the NATO umbrella, do you think that's something that Putin would even consider as part of a peace settlement?
Oh, I really don't know. I certainly doubt that he's willing to accept anything that...
I can already tell this guy's pro-Russia. This guy, Anna was right in that pre-debate clip that we saw earlier. This guy is probably paid by Russia. Holy shit. Yeah, this guy's in the Kremlin's pocket for sure.
That would include even rump, what's left of Ukraine joining the NATO alliance. I certainly hope that Trump would not entertain that. That's what this is.
What's left of Ukraine.
Been largely about, of course, along with the contest over who controls what territory inside the country, is preventing exactly that conclusion. I think it's a real dilemma because...
Have you guys noticed, by the way, that we're getting on 2 years into this war? And in all the last 2 years, these same folks have been saying Russia will beat Ukraine and Ukraine will fall within the next 3 months. Like these right-wingers that are anti-Ukraine or anti-support for Ukraine have been falsely predicting for over a year now the imminent fall of Ukraine to Russia, and yet they continue to hold out. They're taking land back from Russia in some areas, and yet they continue to try and it's this logic of if they continue to deny that Ukraine stands a chance, they can justify not supporting support for Ukraine. And once there truly is no chance anymore, maybe then they can cede this ground, but then they can finally say, well, now there's really nothing that can be done, right? It's just, they're playing for time, is what it feels like. So that once, it's actually too late, they can say, well, it wasn't before, but now it actually is too late, so nothing you can do now. And that's probably when they'll admit that this was all just for the sake of Russia and Putin. I think all these folks, just like the conservatives bragging about your body, my choice when Trump won, I think they'll wait. And if Ukraine does fall to Russia, they'll come out to say, oh, by the way, this is what we were in favor of. They'll come out and they'll admit it.
The Ukrainians, it's not just that Trump has won an election on repudiating Biden's policy and seeking peace here. It's quite frankly that the Ukrainians are just in no position whatsoever to reverse Russia's gains on the ground. Even the
there it is. There it is. It's just Ukraine is imminently going to lose. like they supposedly have been for the last 2 years. We shouldn't support them because they can't possibly win, as they continue to hold out for years.
Biden administration admits that now. The Post, the Times, and the Journal all quote military experts saying that that truly is the case. So, in other words, Kiev and DC are in a position of weakness.
Kiev.
And
these people never say Kiev right. It's always Kiev. For those who don't know, it's pronounced Kiev. They're like at this point, everybody who has any knowledge of this issue should know how Kiev is pronounced.
Trump really has to threaten is more weapons sales and increased weapon shipments. But Biden already tried that. That didn't make the difference. And so I think what's going to happen is the Russians are going to keep probably all 4 of those eastern and southern provinces there. Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson, and hopefully will not demand Kharkiv or Odessa. We can, stop it there.
Oh, and you're right. He's using the Russian pronunciation. Oh, shit. Wait, Redux, that's a good point. That's how Russians pronounce Kiev. Ukrainians say it Kiev, Russians say Kiev. Oh, that's a good spot, Redux. Good shit. I wonder if Anna picked up on that. She probably did.
The Trump administration is going to have to get their messaging straight that this truly is a betrayal, and they admit it, but that it's Biden's betrayal. Biden made this country and these people promises he could not possibly keep. We're going to help you force the Russians all.
Oh, here's the concern trolling. The concern trolling is here.
The way out and all of these things. And all they've done is gotten a bunch of people killed, and then they lost anyway. And it's a real tragedy. It's not Trump's fault. Trump has to be able to have the political capital in this country to.
No one said it was Trump's fault. I'm pretty sure the war started under Biden. We're talking about whether or not Trump is going to fuck over Ukrainians by withdrawing the support that Biden's provided. Yeah, this guy's paid by Russia. This guy is literally in the Kremlin's pocket. I assume, like most people who live in countries that are USSR satellite states, and buffer states, they are very quick to spot Russian propaganda and Russian propagandists. They can smell that shit a mile away. I'm guessing that there are alarms in Anna's head right now that are blaring every time this guy speaks.
Say that, look, it is ugly. But you know what, Piers? He actually, and I don't know how he did this, he got Zalmay Khalilzad, the card-carrying neoconservative Straussian, to sign a deal with the Taliban to get us out of there. And yes, Biden absolutely.
For those who don't know, the woman here on the right is Ukrainian Anna. You can find her on Twitter, I think Blue Sky. I'm pretty sure she's got YouTube and Twitch too. Ukrainian Anna, spelled A-N-A. So definitely go check her out. She's pretty cool. She's doing good work for Ukraine, debunking Russian propaganda. Love to see it.
Botched the withdrawal. I could go on for an hour about that. But Trump was willing to say, you know what? We lost. We're not keeping the Taliban out, and we're going to stop trying now. And Biden, it was really the best thing Biden ever did in his life was agree with that, even though he botched the process of the withdrawal. And so it's the same kind of thing here. It is a real tragedy what the Biden administration.
I still maintain withdrawing from Afghanistan was one of the biggest L's, the biggest L Biden did. I would love to debate a lefty on whether or not the pullout of Afghanistan was good or bad. The people of Afghanistan didn't want us to leave. Yeah.
Has gotten the country of Ukraine into here.
Cenk, I mean, every part of me is I don't want to give a Russian dictator who's illegally, in my view, invaded a sovereign democratic European country that's been independent since the mid-90s. I don't want to give him an inch of that land that he's stolen with his murderous rampage. But there comes in war, I've got a lot of military in my family, there comes in war a cold, hard reality check, as Anna was alluding to earlier, where we are where we are. We can all be idealistic about what we'd like to happen, but the reality is that it is highly unlikely. Now, I think that Ukraine, without a massive extra support from the likes of America, which is simply not going to come.
Well, why isn't it going to? Why are we not in favor of that massive support then? Wait, you admit Ukraine can do that. It just needs support from NATO members like the US. So you agree it's possible. You're on the side of NATO not providing that support. NATO members not providing that support. So you've created a self-fulfilling prophecy of Ukrainian failure in this war by arguing we are against the help you need to win because without the help you cannot win. Like, what is the logic here? There are objective, multinational, like every NATO member, all of Europe has to gain from Ukraine winning this war and retaining as much land as they possibly can. Whether Ukraine joins NATO or not, Europe doesn't want Russia in its asshole like that, okay? Russian occupation of Ukraine is bad for all of us. Like, this is just genuine tactics. It's not like, even if you don't give a shit about the Ukrainian people, if you are in a Western nation, you should not want to live under Russian occupation. You should not want Russia breathing down your neck like this. Ukraine is tanking for us right now. They're tanking the raid boss, that is Russia, like nearly single-handedly.
It is a case of Putin will probably be able to keep what he's taken. Is that your...
Anyone who's played an MMO knows what happens to the healers if they stop healing the tank. The tank dies, and all the threat is on the healers, and they get their shit rocked, okay? And then the DPS get wiped, all right? Like, we don't want to withdraw support for Ukraine. It's not good for anybody.
Your assessment, and is that right for the world, that we give him this big win, which is effectively how he will portray it?
Yeah, that is my assessment. And so the reality on the ground is that when Trump won, we lost about 20% of Ukraine. Now, there's a good argument to be made that you had already lost that 20% of Ukraine and you were never going to get it back because of the military realities on the ground. So,
for those who don't know, like TYT and Cenk Uygur have been going to the right. Like, they're trying very hard to appeal to a right-wing audience. So I don't know if Cenk's going to be based here or cringe. It's really... It's a coin toss right now because they're in that transitionary period where they're trying to keep as much audience as they can while gaining as much conservative audience as they can. So we'll see if he goes like pro-Russia or pro-Ukraine here. He'll probably take some like pussy-ass fence-sitter middle ground position if I were to guess.
So, you know, this has been a very, very difficult question because the U.S. did push Russia too much. We did push NATO to its borders when we said we wouldn't. I understand all that. But at the end of the day...
No, we didn't. Nope. Ukraine is not in NATO. Ukraine did not do anything. NATO did not do anything that prompted Russia to do this. There's no reason behind Putin's actions at all. This is literally just imperialism, okay? Ukraine is not a member of NATO. They weren't gonna be a member of NATO. The conversation's now about actually joining NATO, follow the invasion. This is propaganda for Putin, whether he realizes it or not.
The Russians invaded, and it's not an anti-war position to start a war. So Putin is definitely guilty. Add on top of that 12,000 civilians killed. Add on top of that 20,000 Ukrainian children kidnapped.
Yeah, but he's doing exactly what I said he'd do. The fence-sitting, pussy-ass, spineless, centrist take. Because he's got to be anti-war, absolutely, but he also doesn't want to bite the bullet of admitting he's in favor of Russia taking Ukraine.
What's the answer? Is the answer to fight for the next 10 years, 20 years? Is the answer to cede ground to Putin? Well, that's also super dangerous. That's why this is an unsolvable riddle, because you can get the peace now by doing what Trump is likely going to do, which is Russia take 20% of it, and Ukraine will not join NATO. But the next time Russia thinks about invading a country, they're going to think, well, we went into Georgia and took a chunk. We went into Crimea, took it all, when it was part of Ukraine. We went into Ukraine again, we took 20% of it. It turns out aggression...
Now Russia's just about to own Georgia via, like, government proxy.
...is rewarded, and Netanyahu's watching, and he's going to take a part of Gaza, and China's watching, and they've got the Uyghurs in the detention camps and the re-education camps, and the Russians have the Ukrainian children in the re-education camps. So this is really, really dangerous for the world, no matter how it's resolved.
Yeah, Rob O'Neill, you've been at the sharp end of some of the worst conflicts, wars of the last 25...
It's wild, because, like, half of what Cenk is saying is, like, good, and the other half is cringe. He's, like, taking the most middle ground that he can take here.
5 years. Once again, thank you very much for your extraordinary service, not least in killing bin Laden. What is your overview of where we are here? Trump coming in, obviously, is going to change the dynamic. He proved in his first term he's not a warmonger. He thinks war, apart from anything else, is just terrible business, that it costs a fortune. The rewards are...
Did he not, like, literally, like, shake the foundations of the world and make people afraid World War III was coming when he, like, airstriked like an Iranian general or something? like who did he airstrike? That was like a big deal general that was like, oh, is it happening? Is it about to be World War III? Oh, no? Okay, good. Like, we thought it was happening for a minute. I didn't, but people did. Soleimani, yes. Yeah, Trump took out Soleimani. It was like one of the most out of nowhere, like, war hawk things that like a president has done, you know?
Very low. The other side of that coin is, do you let a Russian dictator run into a European country, take what he wants, and just let him have it? What's your view?
Oh, was he
Well,
Saudi?
unfortunately, we're in a position where it doesn't matter why we got here. We're just here. And Cenk was mentioning Georgia and Crimea and invasion of Ukraine. That's all weak leadership on the United States. And unfortunately, when we have a strong United States, we have a more stable world most of the time. I mean, we did invade Iraq, and I disagree with that, even though I went there. But you're going to have to go to a position of negotiation. I mean, we did say we weren't going to push in NATO further east, and we did. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. We were moving there, and now Ukraine wants to be.
Nope. No, we didn't. Nope. NATO never said they weren't going to expand. That's a lie. That I don't know if this guy is on the anti-Ukraine side of things, but that's not true. Ukraine never promised not to expand. That's literally just a talking point that Putin and Russia used to justify the invasion. But they never promised that. And even if they did promise to never expand, why would that justify invading Ukraine, right? It doesn't make sense. It's twisted logic. And it's based on a premise that isn't even the truth.
Part of NATO, and you know, Russia doesn't want that, and you're dealing with big countries, but you're also dealing with big egos. And Vladimir Putin grew up in a part of Russia where part of the fun was chasing rats with sticks, and he found out what it was like to corner a rat, and that's kind of where he.
NATO exists because Putin is such a warmonger. Like we remember why NATO exists. It's because Russia is a problem. NATO exists because without NATO, there is not an alliance of countries ready for Russia's imperialism. Like, we're acting as though Putin is like the way he is because of pressure from NATO, when NATO exists because of pressure from Putin.
He is right now. He's been in charge of Russia since the early 90s, let's be honest. And he wants to save face with his people. He's lowering the conscription age to get people in there to fight. It's like he's not going to back out, but you can't let him take more. And I'm by no means defending him, but I also think that Volodymyr Zelensky.
I don't think he's in favor of Russia, but he is also he's repeating false claims. Like the NATO promising never to expand. I think one or two countries or representatives from countries in NATO, so they did not have plans for NATO expansion, but that is not the same as NATO coming to a unanimous agreement that they won't expand and promising not to do so. That never happened.
Zelensky's a puppet, and he's laundering money just like most of the people in Washington and Ukraine. That's why the whole argument in Ukraine is how much money people can personally make in Ukraine. I hopefully think that Donald Trump brings a big stick. Also, he doesn't care about embezzling money like the United States is now, and whatever they're doing. But it's not a good situation. But we definitely need to turn. We need alliance solidarity, which we lost by leaving Afghanistan the way we did, and a forward defense. Right now, our Navy, which is the epitome of our forward defense, is under the Biden administration is worrying about getting more transgender bathrooms and getting green ships, even though.
Okay, he's a retard. Pay no attention to the real politics and policy that the administration in charge of the country currently is actually doing. Focus on made-up culture war shit, like they're fighting for gender-neutral bathrooms or whatever. I love when these people scream about how the money we're spending on Ukraine should go to, like, fixing our roads and stuff, and yet you'll never hear any of them utter a whisper about the Biden and Kamala Harris passing the biggest infrastructure funding bill ever. It's going to go into effect halfway through Trump's presidency, and he's going to take all the credit. Hell, like they don't talk about like the American Rescue Plan and all the programs set up like on the White House website, easily available to you to like seek out anything from like, are you a business owner that wants to give paid vaccine leave or paid time off for getting vaccinated from COVID or anything to your employees? The government will pay you. Are you having trouble affording groceries? Sign up for SNAP. Biden funded the shit out of that program. Are you having trouble paying for rent? The government will pay thousands of dollars of your living expenses in both food and housing. Like if you qualify. Like these are things that Biden and Kamala Harris have been behind that you have to work to learn about, because there's no money in reporting on this stuff. And you better believe there's no money in these conservative pundits honestly reporting on what good things that actually help the American people the current administration has been doing. So they train the American people to think about politics like retards, to think it's stupid, dumb, and simple. It's the same thing Trump does, where all of his policies are just slogans that mean nothing, so that his supporters think they're informed, but they're not. They're the opposite of informed. They think they don't need to do any more research, and they know all they need to know while having the opposite of knowledge. It's training people to be dumb and to not think too hard about anything about politics. It's just, the Democrats are just fighting for gender-neutral bathrooms. They're just training people to think about politics in the dumbest way they possibly can.
No, they're all nuclear, which is green. It's just, there needs to be some adults in the room and talk reality, because here's where we are, and someone needs to come to the table and talk to someone else, not worried about how much jewelry Mrs. Zelensky could buy in New York on the taxpayers' dime.
Right. And how popular is Volodymyr Zelensky now with Ukrainian people, do you think?
I'd say pretty popular still. Most people consider him a pretty good representative of Ukrainian people and what we want. And pretty disheartening, I'd say, to hear what people say here, but I'm used to it. Surprisingly, Cenk, I agree with, in the sense that we can't allow Russia to continue get away with what they're doing, because that's what they have been doing in particular.
I like that line. Surprisingly, Cenk, I agree with you. Yeah, Anna's aware of the path that TYT and Cenk Uygur have been on. The good Anna.
With annexation of Georgian territory and Moldova and Ukraine in 14, and now in 22 full-scale invasion. And nothing stops them then from fully invading Moldova or Georgia. They are already doing all they can to select people there as presidents and meddle in their elections quite strongly already. And if they can't do it with just hybrid methods of sabotaging the elections and making people basically install their puppets there, then they do sort of like a blackmail. Then they do threats, and then they do annexation, invasion, terror, death, and all that we are having right now in Ukraine. And that's not.
And how would you describe? And how would you describe the mood of the Ukrainian people? When I was there, like I say, 2 years ago, to a man and woman, whatever age that I met, there was this steely resolve of, we've got to win this at all costs. But the cost has been enormous. So many cities just
I mean, from what I have seen, and granted I want to hear Anna's answer, from what I've seen, I feel like the Ukrainian people have been motivated even harder to fight. They're not fighting out of pride. I'm sure there's some national pride to it, but at the end of the day, Russian occupation is awful. Especially historically for Ukrainians, Russian occupation is a nightmare scenario. Even if you had all the rights of any regular Russian under Russian occupation, things are worse for you than they are in current Ukraine. So Anna is the only actual human being on this panel. So true, Heavy Gretel. Very true. All four of these people I consider them like soulless husks. Their jobs are just tell people what they want to hear in a certain area in order to farm as much money as they can off of it. Anna is just a random person from Ukraine who's got a niche micro celebritydom centered around her advocacy and her anti-Russia propaganda stuff. Ukraine and Russia have been fighting each other since the 1400s, the 1400s. Yeah, I mean, the furthest back in the history that I'm super aware of is the Holodomor, and how Stalin starved out the Ukrainians because his poor management of Russia at the time, where he moved all the farmers away from agriculture and into factories to try to rapidly industrialize the USSR. And this resulted in a massive famine because there was a confluence of factors, and that was one of the biggest. There was also some natural disaster related things like just droughts and shit that hit at the same time. So problems on problems led to a massive famine called the Holodomor or famine event, I guess you would call it, in the USSR, called the Holodomor. And not the oligarchy, I guess, but the government of the USSR, Stalin, ordered that all the food be collected and rationed out. But who saw the majority of their food taken, and who saw the least amount rationed out to them? In most cases, the Ukrainians did. And so going back to at least the USSR, I'm aware of practically just genocidal actions that Russia has taken against the Ukrainians. So yeah, I imagine that this situation goes back a long way.
Destroyed, so many people killed, all these children being taken.
That wasn't even the first time they've tried to starve the Ukrainians to death. Not surprising.
And so on. Is there a mood now in the country that they just want peace, just want a deal, even if it means surrendering the territory that's been taken?
Well, nobody wants peace more than us. I live in a city that is bombed every day. You know, my father has been killed. So, of course, we want peace. But that depends on what that peace is, because nobody wants peace without any sort of justice, right? And that is the problem, because we have to consider our now, obviously, right? Even if the fire stops. So, let's say my city stops being bombed every day. That's a bonus for me, obviously, right? And for my family and for my friends. But how important is that bonus? Because it's a temporarily bonus. We have to think about the future, that other people, other generations are not going to go through exact same things we went through. And that's quite important to most Ukrainians. But the mood, of course, have been solid. As you said, people were more enthusiastic before, specifically because of the, I would say, lack of care and lack of commitment from our allies, particularly the incredible amount of limitations on our long-range strikes. For example, as you know, UK actually gave us the long-range missiles, Storm Shadows, I believe they're called, and we couldn't really use them because of the limitations that were given to us, primarily by United States and by Biden, by the way, himself administrated.
Yeah, what she's talking about here is wild, by the way. Ukraine had everything it needed to practically annihilate Russia's fleet really close to the beginning of the war, and Biden only just gave the approval to Ukraine to use that long-range weaponry on Russia that would have allowed them to cripple Russia's naval presence around Ukraine very early in the war. They've only just gotten that permission, and so in a lot of ways, this war was like, there were several potential checkmates that Ukraine could have claimed, and like at multiple points throughout the war, and that was the first of them. And the only reason why it wasn't taken was because the US didn't, like, it's not even financial support. It was like giving the green light to Ukraine took so long. That's actually something that I'll criticize Biden for. Biden should have given approval for this years ago. Like a year and 6 months ago, like toward like 3 weeks into the war at the latest, Biden should have given approval for long-range weaponry to be used by Ukraine on Russia. Like, it's easy to say that in hindsight now, but had I known when the war started that Biden was holding Ukraine back, I would have been dropping more criticism of him for that. I would have been calling that out the moment I heard about it, because that's bullshit. Like, Biden only did that, only held back on giving the green light to save face. So, because like the war is unpopular with Americans, no matter how just it is. So, it was a face-saving move that fucked the Ukrainians' chances of serious victory, like a long time ago and at multiple points. So that's a big Biden L, in my opinion. I think Biden is overall a W, but I'm not a sycophant for the guy. I disagree with his pullout of Afghanistan, how that was handled and done. Like, I think he should have just stopped it. I disagree with not giving Ukraine the green light to use long-range weaponry. I disagree with a lot of his rhetoric about guns. Like, obviously, Biden's not perfect.
His administration, at least. So in that sense, there has been a sort of demoralizing effect, of course, because of the lack of aid, inconsistent aid from both the United States and also European countries as well. And it's hard to sustain that sort of like, I'd say, hopefulness and will when you are not confident that you will have means to fight with properly.
Yes.
And that, I would say, dampen the mood.
Yeah, I understand that. Scott, a lot of people have come on this show since this war started, and they've made the argument, which I know that you subscribe to, which is effectively the West and Ukraine goaded Russia into doing this by continually pushing for NATO membership, for NATO encroachment, and so on, as the Russians saw it. There's another school of thought that this could have been resolved diplomatically. That actually, yeah, you can take that argument. You can see there's merit to that argument.
No, Putin does not have reasonable demands he's making. That's not there. This is not a guy who just wants to come to the negotiating table and figure out a solution. He doesn't have reasonable demands.
Certainly to a degree, but it doesn't justify launching a full invasion of your neighboring country. Would you accept that the invasion itself didn't actually have to happen?
Yes, I have a whole section in my book about all of Putin's different options that he could have taken. The book is not called Justified, why Russia had to do what they had to do. It's called Provoked, how Washington started the new Cold War with...
Provoked. You see, Russia was provoked into invading a sovereign country. They were provoked.
Russia and the catastrophe in Ukraine, because the book is 700 pages of all of this going back to the end of the last Cold War. And with all due respect to the guy that shot bin Laden in the head, thank you. And with all due respect to this young woman whose poor country is being bombed to death and their opinions here, it's just not the case that what we have is a...
Oh yeah, I think this guy is one of the dudes who... I don't think this is the guy who shot bin Laden. Okay, so here's the deal with the bin Laden thing, all right? I'm going to tell you something related, all right? This guy is part of the team that took out bin Laden. This guy right here in the middle, he was part of that, like, operation. He went into that house and cleared it, where they found bin Laden, and one of the guys on like this 8 or 6 person team took the killing shot on bin Laden. Or actually, I think they got his son, and then the same guy who I think shot and killed his son, killed bin Laden after, and then they all shot him. And so this might be the guy who did it, but what I do know is that there are a bunch of dudes, like most of the dudes that were on that team have claimed they were the ones who killed bin Laden, and have like gone on Joe Rogan and all these podcasts, and they become like memers about it. So I don't know if this is the Robert J. O'Neill guy who apparently did it. That is not Robert O'Neill. So yeah, I think this is just one of the dudes in the team who shot bin Laden's corpse in the face. So I think he did technically shoot bin Laden, but he's one of the dudes who shot his body after he was taken out, because they did that. And he's now like a pundit on the right, like grifting off of the credit for having been on the team clearing the house, backing up the guy who killed bin Laden, and technically did fire a double tap shot into him, but like he was dead. It was bin Laden's corpse that he shot. Just letting you know that, like, keep an eye out for these dudes. There's a few guys out there running like this conservative grift circuit that all call themselves the guy who killed bin Laden. So just letting you guys know.
It's a simple case of a Hitlerian, Putin-led Russia running roughshod and rampage, and the only thing to stop them is when tough, good guys like us stand up to a bully like him. For example, in a war that they both cited numerous times here today, the Georgia war was begun by the American sock puppet, Saakashvili. He launched that war and killed Russian peacekeepers.
This is all about trying to frame a criticism of Russia as a greater criticism of the West. This is a tanky talking point. Like, oh, I don't like Russia, I don't like Putin, but man, I mean, Putin did what anyone would do based on the provocation by the U.S. and by Western powers.
In his initial assault. And they lied about that, led by John McCain during the campaign at the time in 2008. But even the New York Times later admitted that, yeah, it was true, that was how that war started. And it was, and part of his motivation to do that was that Bush, a few months before, had given him sort of a pseudo membership action plan for joining NATO. But you can't join NATO if you don't have settled borders. And Georgia had these 2 breakaway provinces under Russian protection. And so he was trying to reincorporate them so he would have a settled border so he could join America's military alliance, which completely blew up in his face and got a bunch of people killed. But that's just...
I don't know enough about that detail to refute it, but based on Anna's reaction, it sounds like bullshit.
Not the same thing as Putin wakes up every day scheming on how he can conquer Poland, and only America's threat of ultimate H-bomb annihilation is holding him at bay. It's just really not like that. It's much more complicated than that. And, you know, again, back to your original question, it's not to say that he's justified in what he's done, but it's like if you get in a bar fight and you're shoving a guy with a knife in his pocket and he stabs you, that doesn't justify, you shoving him doesn't justify.
Get into a bar fight. I like in his analogy, he can't frame it accurately as an aggressor targeting somebody who did nothing to them and attacking them with no real provocation. There was no provocation. Kind of looks like Robert O'Neill. Is it him? Bin Laden kill squad team. Okay, who are the SEAL Team 6 guys? Okay, it could be him. Yeah, I think it is the same guy that actually did the shooting. Okay. Yeah, he is the guy that that popped bin Laden. But there's a guy who was backing him up, I think, who is stealing his cred. They're stealing bro's credit. Oh man, he was a bit of a bulkier guy when he got bin Laden. That explains why I didn't recognize him. He had different facial hair, and he was a lot bulkier. Apparently, the only evidence we have it was him is his claim. But I assume his whole team backs him up. Maybe there's like, wait, do we actually not know for sure which of these SEAL Team 6 guys killed bin Laden? Like, is it all of them claiming they did it? That's actually funny, if that's what's going on.
By him stabbing you, but also you were shoving a guy with a knife in his pocket, and don't pretend like he just woke up this morning looking to pick a fight with
you. Were shoving a guy with a knife in his pocket. What shoving was Ukraine doing?
With you. And one more thing here, a great example, and then I'll leave it, is the status quo in Crimea held from 1991 all the way through 2014. What changed was that, and there was a controversy over it. It's an extremely important Russian naval base there at Sevastopol and the rest of this. It was in controversy since independence. But the status quo held until the Barack Obama government overthrew the government of Ukraine for the second time in 10 years. And then the new...
Overthrew the government of Ukraine. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, he's getting those paychecks from the Kremlin. That's for damn sure.
Regime immediately threatened to repeal and abolish the Kharkiv Pact, the agreement by which Russia was allowed to stay at Sevastopol. And it was only then that they seized the Crimean Peninsula. So it's not to say that, oh, it was perfectly justified for them to do so, but it is to say that it was Barack Obama and Joe Biden who picked that fight, and then it was Putin who finished it. And then this is a big part of the reason why the war in the East broke out immediately, was because when the dissenters seized buildings in the East, and including with some Russian...
You can hear him, like, really trying not to let, like, a Freudian slip happen where he admits that, like, he thinks Ukraine is like a invalid state or something. You can tell this guy does not consider Ukraine a legitimate state. He's let the dog whistles kind of slip out a couple times already, and I've picked up on them. This guy does not actually believe Ukraine is a legitimate state, and I hope that Anna asks him if he thinks Ukraine is a legitimate state, and gets a straight answer out of him.
Russian help, just like the Westerners helped the Maidan. They declared war against them. They overreacted at John Brennan's behest. We know this, it was reported in Forbes. John Brennan went there on April 12th. They launched the war on the 14th. And the reason that they did that was because the coup had already blown up in their face in the loss of Crimea.
Right.
So they weren't about to tolerate this kind of dissent in the East. It's not Russian propaganda. I'm a Texan. I don't even read Russian or know what the Russians say about this stuff. This is the history of the world.
Oh, yes. I am a Texan from Texan Oblast. Praise Trump. Glory to America. We must back up Russia and stop supporting Ukraine. Too much money is going to supporting this war. We should be spending it on Americans. Yeah. I love when you see the Russian accounts on Twitter that all claim they're Texans. They always claim to be Texans. That's funny as fuck. Yes, I'm sure. There's never been a case where a Texan, or someone who claims they're Texan, has pushed Russian propaganda. Dude, Texas is basically little Russia in America right now.
I do. I speak Russian. That's my...
That's
yes.
fine. Listen,
can I please interject with that?
Well, let me just say right here. Anytime anyone contradicts the party line on this, that's all anyone ever says is that this is Russian propaganda. But that's just a bunch of crap.
Because it is.
They're plagiarizing me,
you repeated it in
and
English.
I'm just speaking the truth.
Are you getting money or not? I'm just wondering,
break,
you know.
lady.
At least they pay you.
That really...
Give me a break, lady. You destroyed her, bro. I love when, like, a guy can't win a debate against a woman on the basis of facts or logic or anything, and now he's like resorting to this weird, like, paternalistic, like overtly misogynistic, let's just call it out, like belittling and dismissal, because he doesn't have an argument, so he has to dismiss.
It's all you have, because you can't contradict any of my facts, so you have to come up with this nonsense.
I can contradict everything you said. I
the reality is,
in my
no one in America cares about Russia at all, lady. Nobody in America cares about Russia. Back in the days of communism, there were communists that did.
Can I please have a word? This person spoke quite a bit. We had given him a rooper to repeat Russian talking points and lies, blatant lies. So, you know,
okay, well, Scott, let Anna just respond to what you were saying, Scott. I'm to hear a
lot of bullshit was said, so it's kind of difficult to counter everything. Basically, it was not a coup. It was a revolution that millions of people participated in. The reason we participated, me included, I was 19 back in the day, it was because we had severe problems with corruption and a tyrannical puppet of Russia, Yanukovych, who refused to make a treaty with the European Union, which is what most of the people in Ukraine wanted, 60-something%, and especially younger people wanted to move away from Russian control, from Russians owning every single business industry in my country, and to have some sort of like laws and order, and also have some sort of democracy and liberty. That is what something people have in the West, and that's something that we did not have. So that was about, the revolution was about that, about students going and protesting and getting beaten up, and Yanukovych then going to Russia to essentially ask Putin, his buddy, how can he stop the protesters, which he then made dictator laws that prohibited people to effectively protest at all in this country. So we didn't appreciate that, and we went, literally millions of people participated in Maidan. That is not a coup. That is not something you buy for Obama or Nuland cookies. I'm sorry to say, never received a single cookie yet. It's been a long time. And yeah, all of that, when going to Georgia is a whole other thing, but that's just what Russia does. It creates unrest. It supports militias in the countries, and then it basically floods them with weapons, and also applies its own soldiers to annex territory by the guise of protecting Russian speakers or any of that. Scott is a master, I believe Scott is the name, right? Here, but I am a Russian speaker from Eastern Ukraine. It's about as east as it gets in Kharkiv, and I didn't require their protection. I was never prosecuted. What they did is that they attacked us under the guise of protecting Russian speakers that was never prosecuted in this country, because half of us literally are Russian speakers. We have been Russified back in the day by Russian Empire. So yeah, this war is about not about you I'm sad to say some things are not about America. This war is about our very long time, centuries-long oppressor trying to...
I love how quickly he got to the brain dead mindset that I keep hearing from Russia brainwashed Americans. He might be one of them. He might be a literal propagandist paid by the Kremlin, for all I know. But, like, man, I wonder... I don't want to break it up because what Anna's saying is so based. I'm going to rewind it in a sec to, like, let it play, like more without an interruption. I'm going to see if I can find an example of this, like, Americans don't care about Russia or Ukraine stuff. Oh, man. I saw this really dumb clip recently, and I was hoping I could find it and play the clip. It's a clip from a popular podcast where one of the hosts, who's very conservative, very pro-Trump, does the whole, like, anti-war bit about how I want free healthcare. I want our roads to be paid for. I don't want to support a proxy war against Russia. We don't care about this. We want to take care of our own people. Like this talking point, and it's just some like middle-aged, well-off white guy from like Missouri or something who's so concerned about the U.S. supporting this war against Russia. I was hoping I could find that clip because it's so stupid, but it's such a good representation of the what it looks like to see a red-blooded American cucked out to Russia and not to even realize it. Like, they're fully convinced that it's either helping Ukraine or helping Americans. And they think that the people who want to withdraw support from Ukraine have any desire to help Americans.
Thrust us back under their control, and we didn't want that. People in Georgia don't want that, if you can see it by now, currently, by the revolution and the protests going on in the country, exactly for the same reason, because their corrupt Russian puppet government refused the people's will to be part of Europe. So it was never about NATO, because we never discussed joining NATO until Russian invasion. It was never even a conversation in Ukraine about joining NATO. So thanks for the lies, obviously. Also, yeah, they do have borders with NATO right now, and they had them before. Now it's even bigger. It doubled because Finland, in fear of Russia, joined NATO. That's why people join NATO, because they want protection from Russian aggression.
Okay, thank you.
NATO exists because of it provides protection from Russian aggression. That is why NATO exists as well. Very good arguments from her. She cooked there. Yeah.
Rob, you've been waiting patiently. It's interesting. I mean, I find with these debates, I learn a lot, but I'm not entirely sure where the truth lies. Having just heard two very different versions of the history here, what would you like to say?
Well, I mean, what I like to say is,
You know what would be really cool, Piers Morgan? Like, as a host who is moderating a debate, you know what would be super cool? If you or any of the employees that you have, like, live fact-checked the claims of your debaters, and after they've made a point, you interjected to, like, say, if the other party is not going to interject and debunk whatever point was made that you have now checked and ensured was not a truth, you can now call it out. Do you think maybe that would be a good way to run a debate? Like, actually caring about the truth? Because, like, this is not a real debate. I want to be clear. Like, Anna is here to do her best to counter-message Russian propaganda as an actual Ukrainian, and it is valuable that she is here, and it is good. But I want to be clear. This format, these types of debates, are not real debates. Like, not in the hyper-traditional sense, where it's like, the forum gathers, we're going to have a debate over a topic and people will watch, and the one who can substantiate their argument the best will be the victor. Like, that's like the idealized, hyper-traditional idea of a debate. This is just fanfare, is what it is. It is for Piers Morgan to use the already existing platforms of his guests to gain a new audience, bit by bit, obviously. And it's also for Piers Morgan to profit off of the argument. I've never seen him live fact-check something. They just usually only jump to action when someone makes a claim about the show. Okay, so wait. Piers Morgan does have fact-checkers, but they only jump to action if someone makes a claim that's false about his show? The last time debates were live fact-checked was like the 90s and before. Yeah, it's because these debates, like, they don't do well because people watch them to find out who's right. They want to see the guy on their side win the debate. By any means necessary. That is how these go. I mean, that's even why we're here. We want to see Anna, who we're supporting, win the debate by any means necessary. And I think she has. But I want to be clear here that Piers Morgan is a hack. And I'll defend that take should I ever get invited on his show. I don't know why several of these explicitly factual-based claims. They're not opinion-based. It's not an opinion-based claim to make the claim that NATO promised to never expand, and they did, and that's why Putin invaded. If you claim that the reason Putin invaded was because NATO expanded, despite claiming it never would, then let's look up whether or not NATO actually promised to never expand. I assure you, if you look it up, you'll find they never made that promise. Why not fact-check these absolutist statements from both Anna and the opposition side of the debate? That should be the standard, and it's so frustrating to me. It's like so evident to me when I can see like these pundits who don't actually, they pretend like they're hosting these debates. They're like, we're going to come to the truth of the matter. No, that's not at all what's happening here. Hearing Anna was great. It was great to see an actual Ukrainian speaking on the conflict. Piers is always saying, I spoke to Trump last week. Cenk very rarely talks about Ukraine, even on his own show. Piers just brought him on in case he gets angry and it can be clipped. Real. Piers Morgan is the Jerry Springer of politics. True. Please ask Anna back. The world needs to hear her perspective. Anna curb stomped Scott. Thanks for any person like everyone's just saying thank you to Cenk Uygur for not talking at all. Anna is literally 1,000,000 times more enlightening than any other debate I've watched in Piers Morgan. Seems to be the overwhelming consensus in the comments. Based! Hell yeah. That's what I like to see. Good shit. I don't know if Ukrainian Anna knows about me. I don't really expect her to, considering her country is being invaded and she's got more important things to worry about. But if she sees this, that is some good shit. And that was a great debate. Fantastic work. You love to see it. Keep it up. I recommend, if she hears this, I hope she continues doing more debates. That was awesome. And hopefully she goes back on Piers Morgan. People want her back on there. Anyway, guys, go check out Ukrainian Anna if you haven't already. She's obviously great. And of course, if you want to see more from me and you want to support me, consider dropping a like. Every single thumbs up you leave on my videos and my streams does a lot to support my channel. It goes a long way to boost me in the algorithm. I really do appreciate it, every single one of you. And of course, if you haven't already, consider, I don't know, perhaps reaching out to leave a like and a comment and a sub. Follow my social medias, link down below in the description. Maybe if you want to support me directly financially and you can afford it and you feel like it, you can donate, subscribe, or gift a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live. Or perhaps you can support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, Patreon, or even buying merch through the Streamlabs link down below in the description. Regardless of how you support me, though, thank you so much for watching, no matter what, where, and how. And as always, have a good one.